Jeremy White. Chris, a question on critical thinking and social justice warriors, SJWs. Just recently I found myself irrationally prompting some feminists via Facebook. All I did was make a comment that asked a lot of questions because the status poster was speaking on behalf of other people and not just describing her experience. The funny thing is, when I merely asked some questions about her claim, I was bombarded by her fellows, mostly female and some male, with an onslaught of ad hominem attacks. To defend their precious friend being questioned, I was subjected to an unending character assassination. It didn't bother me, but it's interesting to see. At one point, a couple people even commented that I can't just rattle ad hominem as an argument. In the era of the social justice warrior, where they don't follow proper rules of argument but demand that you do, how are we to initiate any sort of change or engage in any kind of dialogue? I've always held the view that if you disagree and don't want to have a reasonable discussion about a topic, then you aren't worth my time. But now there are so many of them that it seems we need to find a way to get through. What are your thoughts on this? Okay, social media. Yeah, this has been a challenge for sure, especially in the age of Trump, where I've run into some difficulties with Trump supporters on social media who, within a comment or two, are name calling and labeling me, and when I'm trying to present some information that might not be favorable towards Trump. I've also encountered the same thing with SJWs and people on the left who have fairly extreme ideas about tolerance and understanding and that sort of thing. Where they demand tolerance and understanding, and if you don't tolerate them, then they start out with the name calling and the labeling, and that also gets a little old pretty fast. I generally tend to agree with you that if it gets that bad that quickly, I just sort of don't even go there, because what's the point? Social media is to engage socially, and it should be rational social discourse, not name calling and Twitter arguments and hate fests. I don't have the time for that, and I don't think other people really do too. There's no reason to get into it with somebody that way if you don't have a reasonable chance of convincing them. Now, on that line, and I think I've talked about this also recently in another Q&A, if you maintain calm and rationality and go out of your way to point out what it is about the person's argument or position or statements that you agree with first, right? If you can find common ground, if you originate that common ground, you'll generally find, from my own experience with this, that you'll have a more receptive audience to you presenting whatever your disagreement or problem is with what they're saying. I try to establish that sort of thing first, especially with total strangers. I mean, people who don't know you, you don't know them. They've posted something that they feel passionate about, enough about, that they're posting it. And so now you're going to come along and say, well, you're just wrong. Well, good. Prepare for, many shenanigans to ensue. But if you can say, well, look, I see your point about this and this, but I disagree with you about this, right? Then you are establishing agreement. And here's the thing, right? And this is something that I learned that, I learned this wasn't Hubbard, but I learned this while I was in Scientology, and I do believe that this is true. And that is that a sales talk or, any kind of thing you're doing where you're trying to change somebody's mind or convince somebody of something is a gradual series of agreements, not a gradual series of ad hominem, that doesn't do anything. But if you can get a person to agree to one thing, and then you can get them to agree to another thing, you'll find your common ground, and that is the basis of, agreement is the basis of discourse, not disagreement, right? And at least rational, calm, measured discourse. So that's how I approach it on social media platforms. I'm not always successful by any stretch, but I have noticed that I am successful more often than not when I really, put myself to it. And that's one of the key principles that I have, is try to find common ground and agreement. and then work on whatever the disagreements are. Also, there's a matter of clarifying one's position and clarifying the other person's position, because, man, there are so many misunderstandings that happen in text-based communication, because you can't tell when the person's being sarcastic. There's no font for that. You can't tell if the person is being ironic sometimes. Like, these are difficult things to tell from words alone. So sometimes it will save you a lot of time and a lot of grief by asking the person questions about their position rather than making statements about it. A little Socratic method there doesn't hurt at all. And then, maybe through questioning, you can lead the person to look at things a different way, but also help yourself to clarify where they're coming from. And that served me well also as a principal, right? Because I've had plenty of times when people have jumped all over me, and I looked at what they said and I thought, why are they asking me this? What is this? Doesn't have anything to do with what I just said. But then I have to look at it and go, oh, well, if I look at what I posted in a, in this way, right, then maybe, oh yeah, I kind of see how they could get that, right? And so you have to clarify and use the language to get your positions clear. I've found so many times that when I'm in a this huge argument, disagreement with somebody, through some questioning and some granting of their rightness on some things that I can agree with, it really smooths things over. I'd say agreement is kind of the oil in the machine that keeps the thing rolling much more smoothly, if you can think with that, kind of stupid analogy. But anyway, those are just a couple pieces of advice for you, because, ad hominem is all over social media and all over the internet. There are people who don't understand rhetoric or argument or debate, and they are just gonna push their positions, and you have to also kind of, so you have to make up for their lack of understanding of that by being even more strict with yourself about how you engage. Because if you engage, you should be in it to win it. You should be willing to go all the way, right? Otherwise, don't even bother starting the conversation. I've made all the mistakes on this, right? Even up till a couple days ago. So it's not like I'm perfect on any of this. This is just advice that I've found most useful for me. So you bring more to it than they are bringing, and don't get into any ad hominem back, right? In a situation, by the way, directly addressing your question, where I'd be getting it from multiple sources, I just kind of hit the eject button, because you've walked into an echo chamber, and it's next to impossible to convince a group of people of something, when you're the lone voice. I just don't even bother, right? Why give yourself that kind of grief? If you're really interested in taking on an individual and their post or their position or whatever it is they've said that's somehow evoked your ire, try to contact them individually by private messaging or something like that, and engage that way, one-on-one. I've always found that to be far more successful than trying to tear down an echo chamber. That's a losing battle probably 99.9% of the time. So there you go.